It all begins on a stormy night inside a glass-walled penthouse, when a millionaire loses control and shoves his pregnant wife hard, her body slamming against the edge of a marble table, the sound of breaking glass, her scream of pain, and then blood spreading across the cold white floor. The heartbeat of the baby inside her fades, while he coldly calls it an accident. But justice has a name, and it belongs to her brother, a former soldier returning to expose every lie. What follows is fury, truth, and a reckoning that no amount of money can bury. Stay with us until the end, and tell us what time you're listening and where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Rain hammered against the glass walls of the penthouse high above Central Park West. Lightning flashed across the skyline, cutting silver lines through the blackness of the night. Inside, every surface gleamed like polished ice. The marble floor reflected the chandelier's golden light, and in that reflection stood Olivia Carter, barefoot, pregnant, trembling. She was 8 months along. Her hand rested over her belly, as if it could shield the tiny life inside. Across from her stood Mason Hale, her husband, Manhattan's golden billionaire, the man whose face appeared on every business magazine and charity billboard. His tuxedo was still perfect from the gala, but his eyes had turned hard and glassy from bourbon. The mask he wore for the world had cracked. "You embarrassed me tonight," he said, his voice low, sharp enough to cut. "In front of clients, in front of investors. You couldn't keep your mouth shut for one evening." Olivia tried to steady her breathing. "I didn't say anything wrong," she whispered. Her voice wavered, but her eyes stayed soft. "I only told them the truth about the foundation, about the hospital for the children." Mason slammed his glass down on the table. It exploded into shards that scattered across the marble like sparks. The sound echoed through the vast room. "You are nothing without me," he spat. "Don't forget who made you." Olivia flinched but did not step back. Her body shook from fear and exhaustion. The bruise on her wrist, faint but real, caught the light when she raised her hand. "I just want peace, Mason," she said quietly. "We're going to be a family, please, not tonight." He laughed, a hollow sound that chilled the air. "A family? Don't fool yourself. You're just another project that went wrong." He took a slow step toward her, then another. The smell of whiskey followed him like smoke. His voice grew quieter, deadlier. "You think the world cares about you? You're a name attached to my fortune." She stepped back until her spine met the edge of the marble counter. "Please," she murmured. Her fingers brushed the countertop for balance. The chandelier swayed slightly above them, as if the whole building held its breath. Mason's hand shot out. He grabbed her arm, squeezing until she gasped. "You're lucky anyone still calls you Mrs. Hale," he hissed. "Tomorrow you'll sign the divorce papers. You'll walk away quietly, or I'll make you wish you had." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't." His grin was thin and cruel. "You still don't understand who I am." The next second felt like a lifetime. He shoved her backward. The world tilted, lights spinning, breath vanishing. Her body hit the counter edge, then the floor. The crash of glass echoed like gunfire. A wine bottle toppled and rolled, spilling a red pool across the white marble, bright as a wound. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then came the low moan of pain. Olivia tried to move, but her body refused to obey. Her hands trembled as she reached for her belly. Warmth spread under her fingers. Not the baby's warmth, her own blood. "Mason," she gasped. "The baby." He froze. For half a heartbeat, something human flickered across his face. Fear, shock, maybe guilt. Then it vanished. His expression hardened into calculation. He turned, grabbing his phone from the table. "Get the car ready," he ordered. "Now." His tone was cold, rehearsed. "She fell. Do you understand? She fell." Olivia blinked through the blur of tears. The chandelier above her fractured into a dozen ghosts of light. She could barely hear over the roaring in her ears. He crouched beside her, placing a hand against her hair as if to comfort her, the same hand that had pushed her. "Everything's fine," he murmured. "Accidents happen." Her breath hitched. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were flat and empty. She saw him glance at the spreading stain on the rug, not at her face. The smell of wine mixed with iron, a bitter perfume of lies. "Mason, please," she whispered. "I can't lose." Her words broke into sobs. "Shh," he said, brushing her cheek. "Don't talk. You'll make it worse." He looked around the room, calculating what the police would see. The shattered glass, the wine bottle, the broken pieces of the night. Then he saw the security camera in the corner. He stood, walked over, and pressed a button on the control pad. The small red light went dark. Outside, thunder rolled again. The wind howled against the windows. Inside, Olivia's pulse slowed to a fragile beat. Her eyes glazed with shock. She tried to crawl toward the phone that had fallen on the floor. Her fingertips brushed it, but Mason stepped on the cord. "Stay down," he ordered, voice colder than before. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You killed our child," she whispered. The words barely made sound, but they pierced the silence. His jaw tightened. "Watch what you say," he said softly. "You're emotional. People forgive women who cry. They don't forgive women who accuse." The room blurred in and out of focus. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, weaker each time. Mason turned away, already dialing someone else. His reflection appeared in the glass wall. Perfect posture, perfect composure, a man preparing his alibi. On the floor, Olivia's hand rested on her stomach. She mouthed a prayer, but no words came out. Lightning flashed again, bathing her face in white light. Her lips parted, gasping for air that would not come. Somewhere in the distance, the sirens began to wail. The sound was faint at first, then grew louder, closer. Mason glanced toward the window, then down at her. "Say one wrong word," he whispered, "and I'll make sure your brother loses everything." Her eyes fluttered open one last time. The chandelier's crystals shimmered above her like frozen tears. The thunder outside faded into a low hum, and the sirens merged with the rhythm of the city below. Olivia's fingers loosened around the phone. Her vision turned to light, then darkness. In the silence that followed, only one sound remained, the faint, fading heartbeat inside her, slowing until it stopped. The wine bottle rolled to a stop beside her, the red pool spreading wider, reaching the edge of the rug where her reflection quivered for a final second before disappearing into the crimson. The first thing Olivia heard was the steady beep of a monitor. It pulsed in the dark, quiet, and slow. A thin line of light slipped through the beige hospital curtains, painting the white sheets a faint gold. Her body ached, heavy and foreign. When she tried to move, pain bloomed in her abdomen like fire under glass. She blinked until the blur of the room became shapes, walls, and a figure sitting beside her bed. Mason Hale. He was dressed in a dark suit, his tie perfect, his posture calm. A faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air, mixed with antiseptic. He was scrolling through his phone as if nothing had changed. The diamond cufflinks caught the morning light. When she spoke, her voice was a dry whisper. "Where am I?" He looked up, smiling slightly, like a man greeting a colleague. "You're awake," he said softly. "That's good news." Her lips trembled. "The baby." The question hung between them like smoke. "Where's the baby?" He didn't answer right away. He set his phone down, folded his hands, and exhaled. "It was an accident," he said finally. "You fell. The doctors did everything they could." The words came out smooth, practiced. Her throat closed. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not what happened." He leaned closer. His eyes had no warmth. "You're confused, Olivia. The shock, the medication. It's better if you don't talk about it." Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. "You pushed me." "Ugh." He smiled again, patient, almost tender. "Listen carefully," he said quietly. "There are reporters outside. Everyone's waiting for a statement. I've already spoken to the hospital staff. They know what to say. You tripped. You fell. That's the story." Her pulse quickened. "You paid them," she said through clenched teeth. "You paid everyone to lie." He shrugged, reaching for a small blue box on the bedside table. "I paid them to protect us." He untied the white ribbon and set the open box beside her. Inside lay a diamond bracelet, brilliant and cold. Olivia stared at it as if it were a weapon. "You think this fixes what you did?" "It's an apology," he replied. "You're alive. That's all that matters." Her laugh came out broken. "You killed our child." For the first time, a flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Careful what you say," he warned. "You're emotional. People understand grief, but not accusations." He smoothed the cuff of his sleeve. Try to rest. I've handled the press. The doctors will confirm everything. The door opened. A middle-aged nurse entered, her shoes squeaking on the floor. Her eyes darted quickly from Olivia to Mason. "Mrs. Hale," she said softly. "The doctor will be here in a moment." Mason rose from his chair, adjusting his jacket. "Good. She needs reassurance." When he stepped aside, the nurse leaned closer to check the IV line. Her hands trembled slightly. Olivia saw the envelope Mason had slipped onto the counter, thick with cash. The nurse avoided her gaze. A few seconds later, a doctor in her 50s came in. Her face was composed, professional, but something tight flickered in her expression when she looked at Olivia. "Mrs. Hale," she began, "you suffered a severe fall that caused placental abruption. You're stable now. But the baby couldn't be saved." The words shattered the air. Olivia pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling only emptiness. A sound came from her throat, small and raw, a cry that didn't end. The doctor hesitated. "I'm very sorry," she said quietly. Then her tone shifted, colder, mechanical. "It appears accidental." Mason's gaze had hardened. The doctor's voice faltered under it. When they left, the room fell into silence again. Olivia lay motionless, staring at the bracelet still glinting in the light. The diamonds sparkled like tiny cages. Her tears blurred the edges of everything. Hours passed in a fog. Nurses came and went. None of them met her eyes. Outside, camera flashes flickered through the blinds. The city had already turned her pain into headlines. She tried to remember the last heartbeat she had heard before the fall. The sound had been small but strong, steady against her palm. Now, all she could hear was the rhythmic beep of the machine beside her, an imitation of life. Footsteps returned. Mason entered again carrying a folder. "These are the papers," he said evenly. "When you're discharged, you'll sign them." She didn't look up. "What papers?" "Divorce," he replied simply. "A quiet settlement. You'll get the house in Connecticut, a monthly allowance, and privacy. No press, no scandal." "I won't sign," she said, her voice trembling but firm. He studied her, as if she were a business deal gone wrong. "You will. You don't have a choice." "I'll tell them," she whispered. "Everyone will know what you did." His jaw tightened. "Then your brother loses everything. His small cybersecurity company, his government contracts, his reputation. One call from me and he's finished." Her breath caught. He knew exactly where to strike. Satisfied, he straightened his tie. "Rest," he said. "You'll need your strength for tomorrow." When the door closed behind him, the room seemed to shrink. Olivia stared at the bracelet again, then reached for it with shaking hands. The diamonds burned against her skin. Slowly, she slipped it off and dropped it into the trash bin. The sound was soft but final. The nurse returned once more to check the IV. Olivia turned her face away. "Why did you take his money?" she asked. The woman froze. "I have children," she murmured, eyes glistening. "I can't lose my job." Olivia nodded weakly. "Neither could I." When the nurse left, darkness crept back into the room. The machines hummed in steady rhythm, echoing the emptiness in her chest. Her phone lay on the tray table beside the untouched glass of water. A faint vibration startled her. The screen lit up, illuminating her pale face. One message, no name attached. "He paid them all. Don't sign anything. Trust no one." Her heart lurched. She stared at the words until they blurred. Her fingers hovered over the keypad. She typed back with trembling hands. "Who is this?" No answer came. The monitor kept beeping, cold and precise. Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against the glass. The city lights shimmered through the drops like 1,000 watching eyes. Olivia lay back on the pillow, her arm draped over her empty stomach. Her tears slipped silently into her hair. The machine beside her kept its perfect rhythm, but in her mind, she still listened for the sound that would never return. Morning light poured through the tall windows of the hospital lobby, bright and sterile. Cameras lined the entrance, microphones raised toward a man in a black suit who stood perfectly composed before a sea of reporters. Mason Hale spoke in a steady, grief-polished voice. "It was a tragic accident," he said, eyes lowered. "My wife slipped at home. The doctors did everything possible. We lost our child, but I asked for privacy during this painful time. The flashes from the cameras flickered like lightning. Behind him, a framed poster of the Hale Children's Foundation gleamed under the lobby lights. Mason turned his face slightly toward it, letting the image of his philanthropy burn into every camera lens. "Please respect our family," he added. "Olivia needs time to heal." The crowd murmured their sympathy. One reporter shouted, "Will the foundation gala next month be postponed?" Mason smiled faintly. "We will continue in her honor," he replied, then walked away through the sliding glass doors, his entourage closing around him like armor. Upstairs, in a locked room with closed blinds, Olivia watched the broadcast from her hospital bed. Her hands gripped the edge of the blanket. The television showed her husband's face, calm, flawless, rehearsed. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper. "He's making me a story," she whispered. "He's turning it into a performance." "Le." The nurse avoided her eyes, pretending to fix the IV line. Later that afternoon, two men in dark suits entered her room. They introduced themselves as medical administrators. One carried a folder of papers, the other smiled too often. "Mrs. Hale," said the first, "we just need your confirmation for the record. The fall occurred around 10:15 p.m., correct?" Olivia frowned. "You already asked me that." "Yes, ma'am," he replied smoothly. "This is just protocol. The hospital must verify everything before release." She hesitated. "I didn't fall. He pushed me." The men exchanged a glance. The one holding the folder closed it slowly. "I understand your pain," he said gently, "but trauma can affect memory. You need rest." They left before she could respond. When the door closed, Olivia realized her chart had been moved. The words on the header now read, "Domestic accident, patient unstable." Her breath caught. "He's rewriting the truth," she said under her breath. That evening, the room fell into shadow. She sat by the window, looking at the reflection of the city outside. The skyline glittered indifferently. Somewhere below, her husband was already shaping the narrative of her life. She touched her belly, feeling nothing but emptiness and the dull ache of disbelief. A soft knock came at the door. A young nurse stepped in with a tray of food. "Mrs. Hale," she whispered. "I shouldn't say this, but please be careful. People are watching you." Olivia turned sharply. "What do you mean?" The nurse's eyes darted toward the corner of the ceiling. A small black dot glowed red against the white plaster. "He had them installed this morning. Security cameras. He said it was for your safety." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. "Get them out," she whispered. "I can't," the nurse said, her voice trembling. "He has permission from administration." She set the tray down quickly and left, glancing over her shoulder. The silence pressed in again, heavier than before. Olivia stood, pulling the curtain closed. Her breath fogged against the glass as she stared at her own reflection. The woman looking back at her didn't seem real. By nightfall, she had convinced herself it couldn't get worse. Then the phone beside her bed rang. She hesitated before answering. "Hello? Mrs. Hale," said a smooth male voice. "This is Dr. Renner from Public Relations. We're coordinating statements for the press. Mason wanted to ensure we use your preferred wording." "My wording?" "Yes," he said cheerfully. "You tripped on a rug near the kitchen. You were alone. It's important that we clarify you were not under stress or conflict at the time." Olivia felt her stomach twist. "You're lying," she said quietly. "Mrs. Hale," he continued, ignoring her tone. "We just need your verbal confirmation on record. You understand how fragile media narratives can be. We're protecting you both." "I won't say that," she said, clutching the phone. "He's paying you to hide what he did." The man's voice softened. "Be careful what you imply. You're recovering from trauma. It would be unfortunate if anyone questioned your stability." The line went dead. Her hand trembled as she set the receiver down. The city's noise bled faintly through the glass, distant and cruel. Hours passed. The hallway lights dim. She stared at the camera in the corner, a tiny red dot pulsing like an unblinking eye. She thought of ripping it down, but exhaustion pinned her in place. When the nurse returned to change her IV, Olivia whispered, "Can you get me my phone?" The nurse hesitated, then slipped it from the drawer. "They told me not to," she murmured, "but I think you should have it." Olivia powered it on. Dozens of missed calls appeared. Unknown numbers. Journalists. Friends. A text from her husband read, "Remember what I said. No interviews. Sleep well." Her fingers hovered above the screen. Another message came in at that moment, from the same anonymous number as before. "He's rewriting everything. They changed your medical file. Don't trust anyone." She stared at it, frozen. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Who are you?" she typed. "Why are you helping me?" 3 dots flickered, then vanished. No reply. She stood and paced the small room. Every inch of it felt like a cage. The walls were white, the sheets white, even the food tray white, a colorless prison built to erase the truth. In the reflection on the window, she saw her face half lit by the television screen. The news ticker scrolled, "Billionaire Mason Hale expresses grief after wife's tragic fall." His photo appeared beside hers. He was holding her hand outside the hospital, a picture taken hours ago. She hadn't even known the cameras were there. Herr Kniesböckl. She switched off the screen. The silence that followed was unbearable. She opened her phone again and scrolled to her contacts. There was only one name she could still trust: her brother. Her thumb hovered over his name. For a long time, she stared at it, afraid of what would happen if she pressed it. The words Mason had whispered returned to her. "Say one wrong word, and I'll ruin him." Her hand trembled. Tears blurred the screen. She took a deep breath, then opened a new message instead. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately. "Danny, I need you. Don't call. Come now." She hit send. The message left the screen like a flare fired into the night. Outside, thunder rumbled again over Manhattan. The rain returned, tracing silver veins down the window pane. Olivia sat back on the bed, clutching the phone to her chest. The small red light on the ceiling blinked once, then twice, watching, recording, waiting. The rain had not stopped. It streaked down the windshield like veins of glass, breaking the city lights into trembling rivers of color. Daniel Carter drove through the Manhattan night, the engine humming low beneath the thunder. His military ID sat on the dashboard, a reminder of the man he had been before life went quiet. The message on his phone still glowed in the dark. "Danny, I need you. Don't call. Come now." He replayed it in his mind again and again. He had not heard from Olivia in months. After their parents died, she had married into the kind of world he could never stand, polished lies and power disguised as elegance. He had warned her. Now, her words felt like a cry from underwater. The car rolled to a stop outside Hale Tower. The building rose like a black monolith above the street, windows glimmering with rain. 2 security guards stood by the entrance, shoulders squared, faces expressionless. Daniel stepped out, the cold hitting his skin like a slap. "I'm here to see Olivia Hale," he said. His voice was calm, clipped. The taller guard shook his head. "Private property, sir. Visiting hours ended." Daniel pulled his wallet from his jacket and flipped it open. The silver military badge caught the light. "Daniel Carter, United States Army. I'm not asking for permission." The guards exchanged a look, hesitated, then stepped aside. One muttered something into his radio. Daniel walked past them, his boots echoing against the marble floor. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper. As he ascended, his reflection in the mirrored wall looked like a stranger. The soldier in him had never quite left. The discipline, the silence, the way his pulse slowed before confrontation. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. The air was still. The faint smell of disinfectant lingered beneath something metallic. He moved forward slowly, scanning the room. Glass shards glimmered under the dim light. A bottle of red wine lay on its side, long dried into a dark stain that crawled across the marble. He crouched, touching the edge of the stain. It flaked beneath his fingers. "Jesus, live," he murmured. The sound of rain against the windows filled the silence. Near the counter, he saw the mark where something heavy had struck, a small indentation in the marble. He followed it with his hand until his palm brushed a faint smear of dried blood. The breath caught in his throat. He turned toward the security camera above the bar. Its red light blinked once, then went dark. He crossed the room, found the control panel hidden behind a framed photograph, and pressed play. The screen stayed blank, all footage erased. He stood still for a long moment, jaw tightening. Then he heard movement from the back of the suite. He followed the sound to the bedroom. The door creaked open. Inside, the curtains were drawn, casting the room in a dull gray. Olivia sat by the window, her hospital bracelet still on her wrist, her eyes hollow, the rain reflected in them like glass. When she saw him, she didn't speak. She only reached out a trembling hand. He crossed the room quickly and knelt beside her. "I'm here," he said softly. Her voice came out as a whisper. "He killed our baby. Daniel froze. The words hung in the air like a blade suspended by a thread. He looked at her face, pale and tired, and something inside him cracked open. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. She told him everything. The push, the blood, the hospital, the cameras, the lies, the world Mason had built around her like a cage. Her voice trembled, sometimes breaking, sometimes fading into silence. When she finished, Daniel stood and walked to the broken glass door leading to the balcony. The city stretched below, alive and indifferent. "He covered it up," he said, almost to himself. "Of course he did." Olivia's eyes followed him. "You can't fight him, Danny. He owns everything, even the police." He turned toward her, the old steadiness of command settling into his voice. "You think I haven't faced men like him before? Men who believe power makes them untouchable?" Her lips parted as if to argue, but she stopped. He stepped closer, kneeling again so they were eye to eye. "Listen to me. I will not lose you the way we lost everything else, but we do this the right way. No revenge, no chaos. The truth will bury him." "Lau." She shook her head weakly. "He'll destroy you." "Not if I move first." His tone was calm, final. "We start tonight." He looked around the room once more. The walls gleamed, scrubbed clean. Too clean. He noticed faint streaks on the floor near the corner where the cleaning crew had missed a spot. The residue shimmered faintly under the lamp. He took a napkin from the table and pressed it against the stain. When he lifted it, the red mark appeared, faint but undeniable. Evidence. He folded the napkin carefully and slid it into his pocket. From a nearby shelf, he picked up a small silver camera. Its lens was cracked, but the memory card slot was empty. He turned it in his hand, eyes narrowing. "He wiped everything," he said, "but maybe not everywhere." Olivia's voice was barely audible. "What if he's watching now?" Daniel glanced up at the ceiling. The small red light above the doorway blinked once. He walked over, pulled a chair beneath it, and climbed up. He pressed his thumb against the wire until it snapped. The red light died instantly. "There," he said. "No one's watching you now." She stared at him, tears pooling in her eyes. "You shouldn't have come." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You called me. That means part of you still believes this can end differently." Outside, thunder shook the windows. He drew the curtain closed. The room dimmed into quiet shadow. Olivia looked down at her lap, at the hospital bracelet still around her wrist. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it off. "He said I fell," she whispered. "He told them all the same lie." Daniel crouched before her again. His voice was low, steady, almost gentle. "Then we show them what really happened." She looked at him as if seeing her brother for the first time in years. "Promise me you won't do something that can't be undone." He met her gaze. "I promise to do it right." "Yes." The lightning outside flared again, throwing their reflections onto the glass. For a brief moment, they looked like two silhouettes standing against the storm. Daniel walked toward the door, pausing before leaving the room. He turned back to her, his face calm but unyielding. "Rest. Tomorrow we start digging." She watched him disappear down the hallway. The sound of the rain swallowed everything else. Her eyes moved to the broken camera on the nightstand, then to the place on the floor where he had found the blood. The chandelier above flickered once, and for the first time in days, she let herself breathe. The morning after the storm, the city moved as if nothing had happened. Cars lined the streets, horns blaring, rainwater still glistening in the cracks of the pavement. Daniel Carter sat inside a small cafe near Midtown, a half-empty cup of coffee cooling beside his laptop. Across from him, Olivia kept her hood low, her face hidden from the windows. The exhaustion in her eyes was a kind of silence he had never seen before. "You don't have to be here," Daniel said quietly. "I do," she replied. "If I stay alone, I'll lose my mind." He nodded, closing his laptop. "Then listen, I used my old network. Hale Corp's internal surveillance runs through a closed system. It's wiped every 24 hours, but the backups might still exist. How will you get them?" He slid a thin ID badge across the table. It bore the name David Harris, Systems Maintenance. "I'll walk through the front door." Olivia looked at the badge, then at him. "And if they recognize you? Then I improvise." His tone was dry, almost calm. He drained the last of his coffee and stood. "Stay out of sight. I'll call when it's done." She reached for his sleeve. "Be careful, he's watching everything." He gave a small nod. then left. The headquarters of Hale Corp rose above the avenue like a steel cathedral. Its mirrored walls reflected the gray sky, making the building look endless. Inside, the lobby buzzed with employees carrying tablets and files, their shoes clicking on polished floors. Daniel entered with steady steps, his ID ready. The security guard barely glanced at the badge. "Tech floor's 2 levels down," the man said, waving him through. The elevator hummed as it descended. When the doors opened, Daniel was greeted by the faint hum of servers and the cold scent of ozone. Rows of computers stretched into the dim blue light, blinking rhythmically like mechanical heartbeats. He approached the main console, slipped on a pair of gloves, and connected a small external drive. His fingers moved across the keys with practiced precision. The screen filled with directories, timestamps, and encrypted data. Most files were labeled and locked, but one folder caught his attention. Incident footage. Archive. He opened it. The latest entry was dated the night of the fall. He exhaled slowly. Then footsteps echoed behind him. Daniel turned. A man in a security uniform stood in the doorway, a flashlight aimed toward him. He was in his mid-40s, tired eyes, shoulders broad from years of routine. "You're not Harris," the guard said. Daniel froze for half a second, then met the man's gaze. "And you're not supposed to be here either, Miller." The guard hesitated. "How do you know my name?" Daniel took a small step forward. "Because you were the one on duty the night of the incident. The cameras were yours to monitor." "UOA?" Miller's hand tightened around the flashlight. "Who sent you?" "My sister," Daniel said quietly. "The woman your boss almost killed." The guard's eyes flickered. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Miller exhaled and lowered the flashlight. "I didn't see anything," he muttered. "Yes, you did," Daniel pressed. "You saw everything. The system logs say someone accessed the camera feeds that night. Someone erased 3 minutes of footage. That someone was you." Miller's voice cracked. "He paid me to do it. Said it was a domestic accident. Said he'd ruin my pension if I didn't comply." He looked around the server room nervously. "If they find out I'm talking to you, I'm dead." "I can protect you," Daniel said. "But I need proof. I need the raw copy." Miller rubbed his temples, torn. "There's one backup. I hid it in my locker at the garage downtown. But we can't go there now. His men watch me." "Then meet me at midnight," Daniel said firmly. "West 52nd Street, under the old bridge. Bring it, and you'll be safe." Miller nodded slowly. "Midnight. But make sure no one follows." Daniel disconnected his drive, pocketed it, and walked out as if he belonged there. In the elevator's mirrored walls, his reflection stared back, controlled, focused, the soldier resurfacing. By the time he reached the street, the sky had darkened again. He checked his watch. 10 hours to midnight. He spent the afternoon tracing Miller's name through public records, confirming his story. Everything matched. The man had been a loyal employee for 16 years. A quiet life, until Mason Hale bought his silence. When night fell, Daniel parked near the bridge. The rain had returned, soft at first, then harder. Headlights blurred in the mist as cars passed above. He waited, engine off, eyes on the rearview mirror. At 11:58, a shadow approached from the far end of the street. Miller. He was hunched beneath a soaked jacket. His steps hurried. Daniel stepped out. "You're late." "Had to make sure I wasn't followed," Miller said, glancing over his shoulder. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "This is the only copy left. If he finds out it exists, we're both finished." Daniel took it carefully. "You did the right thing." "Don't thank me yet," Miller said. "You don't understand what kind of man he is. He has people everywhere. Even the cops." Ugh. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the fear in Miller's eyes. Daniel pocketed the drive. "Go home. I'll handle the rest." Miller shook his head. "There's no going home for me now." He turned toward the street, shoulders heavy with dread. Before Daniel could respond, headlights flared at the far end of the bridge. A black SUV slowed, then stopped. The driver's door opened slightly, but no one stepped out. Miller's face drained of color. "That's one of his cars," he whispered. "Stay calm," Daniel said. But Miller was already backing away. "You don't get it. They're watching us right now." The SUV door slammed shut. The engine revved and the vehicle sped off into the rain. Daniel's eyes followed it until the taillights disappeared. He turned back. Miller was gone. Daniel scanned the empty street, heart racing. The sound of the rain drowned everything. He called out, but there was no answer. On the ground near the curb lay a small, folded piece of paper, soaked through. He picked it up. The ink had bled, but 3 words remained legible. He knows everything. Daniel stood in the rain, the USB clutched in his hand, his pulse hammering against his ribs. He looked down the dark street, then up at the tower that loomed faintly through the mist. Mason's world was starting to crack, and he knew it. Daniel walked back to his car, water dripping from his hair. He placed the drive in the glove compartment and started the engine. The wipers swept across the windshield, revealing his reflection in the glass, determined, grim, and ready. In the rearview mirror, he thought he saw headlights again, faint and distant, following. He pressed the gas and disappeared into the storm. By sunrise, the city was already buzzing. News vans lined the street outside Olivia's apartment, their antennas reaching toward the gray sky like spears. Reporters shouted questions to the doorman, waving printed photos of her and Mason. Every headline told the same story. Billionaire betrayed by troubled wife. Sources say Olivia Carter fabricated abuse. Inside, Olivia sat on the couch, eyes blank. The television blared with noise she could not shut out. Mason's face filled the screen, tearful and controlled, as he spoke to a journalist. "I love my wife," he said. "She's been through emotional trauma. Sometimes grief can create confusion." The interviewer nodded sympathetically. "You're saying she imagined what happened?" "She's hurt," Mason answered softly. "She needs help, not blame." Olivia's hands trembled. She reached for the remote but dropped it. "He's making me look insane," she whispered. Daniel stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear. "They're running his statement on every channel," he said. "He paid someone to bury the hospital records." "Can you stop it?" she asked. "I can try," he said, lowering the phone. "But he's faster than I thought. He's buying the narrative." A knock came at the door. Daniel motioned for her to stay still, then opened it slightly. 2 officers stood in the hallway, badges visible. "Daniel Carter?" one asked. "We have a warrant to search the premises. There's an ongoing investigation concerning defamation and property theft involving Mr. Mason Hale." Olivia rose from the couch, heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" The officer ignored her. "We have authorization to seize all digital devices." Daniel tried to stay calm. "This is harassment. She's the victim here." The second officer stepped forward. "Sir, step aside, or we'll have to detain you." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he moved back. The officers entered, opening drawers, collecting laptops, flash drives, cameras. One of them picked up the small black bag that held the USB drive Miller had given him. "Wait," Daniel said sharply. "That's mine." The officer didn't answer. He zipped the bag closed and added it to the pile. Olivia clutched her chest, the room spinning. "He took everything," she whispered. The officers left without another word. The door shut. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Daniel stood there, fists clenched. "He's 1 step ahead," he said. "Every time we move, he's already watching." She sank onto the couch, her voice breaking. "How does he do this? He's rich, he owns the story, and he's willing to kill anyone who changes it." A chill passed through the room. The rain outside began again, faint at first, then harder. Daniel looked at the window. "We still have Miller. He's the only one who can testify." Olivia turned toward him, eyes red. "If he's still alive." The phone rang. Daniel grabbed it. "Carter?" A voice came through, strained and shaking. "It's Miller." Daniel exhaled in relief. "Where are you?" "I can't talk long," Miller said. "They know I met you. They've been following me since last night." "Listen," Daniel said. "Stay calm. We'll find a safe place." Miller's breath came fast. "I'm in my car. I think someone's outside my building. If something happens to me..." The line went silent. Then came a faint, distant noise. A door slamming, a shout, a sudden crash. "Miller!" Daniel yelled. "Miller, answer me!" No response, only static. He lowered the phone slowly. "He's gone." Olivia covered her mouth. "No." Daniel turned off the TV, his face hardening. "It's Mason. He silences anyone who can expose him." She stood, shaking. "Then what do we do now?" He looked around the room. Everything of value was gone. The walls seemed to close in. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. "We regroup," he said quietly. "We find another way." Later that night, a storm rolled in. Thunder rattled the windows. Olivia sat by the table, staring at a single framed photo of her and Mason. She picked it up and threw it to the floor. The glass shattered, scattering fragments like ice. Daniel came from the hallway with his laptop bag. "I managed to recover something," he said. "When they took the drives, I had already cloned one." "You clone?" She looked up, hope flickering. "Does it have the footage?" "Not yet," he said, "but it has the internal email logs. Transactions, security authorizations, timestamps. Enough to prove manipulation." He opened the laptop. The screen glowed blue, casting light across their faces. A folder blinked open. Lines of data filled the screen. Payment histories, call logs, and Mason's encrypted transfers to shell accounts. "This is proof," Olivia whispered. "This shows he bribed them." "Yen, it's not enough for the police," Daniel said, "but it's enough for the public." Before he could explain, a loud knock shattered the moment. They froze. Daniel closed the laptop. "Stay quiet." The knock came again, harder this time. "Open up!" a man's voice shouted. "Police! We need to speak with Miss Carter." Olivia backed away from the door, panic flashing in her eyes. Daniel motioned for silence. He peered through the peephole. 2 officers again, but something about them was wrong. Their uniforms were clean, but their stance was off, too casual, too confident. He turned off the lights. The apartment sank into shadow. "Daniel," Olivia whispered. "What's happening?" "They're not here for questions." The door handle rattled. "Miss Carter, open the door or we'll enter by force." Daniel grabbed her arm gently. "We have to go, now." He led her toward the fire escape. Their footsteps muffled against the carpet. Behind them, the lock cracked. The door burst open. Flashlights swept across the empty living room. From the alley below, they heard voices echo. "They went out the back!" Rain lashed against them as they ran through the narrow street, breath coming fast. Daniel turned the corner, pulling her into the shadows beside a dumpster. "Don't move," he whispered. Footsteps pounded past. Shouts rose, then faded into the distance. They stayed still until the sound was gone. Olivia leaned against the wall, trembling. "He's hunting us!" "One." Daniel wiped the rain from his face. "He thinks he's won." Lightning flared, revealing the fear and determination in both their faces. "Does he know about the backup?" she asked. He shook his head. "No one does." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black USB. "This is all that's left." She stared at it as if it were a heartbeat in his hand. "If he finds out—" "He won't," Daniel said. A siren wailed somewhere in the distance, then faded into the storm. Olivia looked up at the dark sky. The rain fell harder, mixing with her tears. "Miller died for that," she whispered. Daniel closed his hand around the drive. "Then we make it count." Thunder rolled again, shaking the street. The wind whipped through the alley, carrying away their voices. They stood there, drenched and silent, surrounded by shadows and the echo of everything they had lost. Rain streaked across the cracked windows of the small apartment in the Bronx. The sound was steady, a kind of heartbeat against the night. Inside, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open, the blue light flickering over his face. Olivia paced behind him, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to warm herself with a cup of tea. The walls were bare except for a single lamp that buzzed weakly. The city outside sounded far away, muffled by the storm. It had been 2 days since Miller's death. Neither of them had slept much. "Who else can we trust?" Olivia asked. "No one in the system," Daniel replied. His voice was quiet but firm. "Not the police, not the lawyers Mason pays. We need someone outside his reach." He typed rapidly, lines of code scrolling across the screen. Olivia leaned closer. "What are you doing?" "Reconstructing his email archives. The drive he didn't know I cloned still has encrypted fragments." Her eyes widened. "You can break that?" "Eventually," he said. "But it'll take more than me. There's someone I need to call." He picked up his phone and scrolled to a number he hadn't dialed in years. When the line connected, a deep voice answered. "Carter, it's been a while." "Aaron Walsh," Daniel said. "I need your help." A pause followed. "You know I don't practice anymore," Aaron replied. "Not since Mason ruined me." "That's exactly why I'm calling," Daniel said. "He destroyed you because you wouldn't take his bribe. Now you can help destroy him." The silence on the line stretched, broken only by the hum of rain. Then Aaron spoke. "Send me what you have." Within the hour, the three of them met at a dim warehouse near the river. Aaron Walsh was older than Daniel remembered. His gray hair was cut short, his coat heavy with rain. He looked like a man who had seen too much and believed too little. Olivia stayed close to Daniel, her eyes wary. "You were the prosecutor who almost took Mason to court years ago," she said. Aaron nodded. "Almost. He made the evidence disappear. He made witnesses disappear." Daniel placed the USB on a metal table. "Not this time." Aaron took the drive and slid it into his laptop, the screen filled with folders. He opened one, revealing dozens of files marked with dates, audio logs, and transaction codes. His brow furrowed. "These are internal communications," he said. "Corporate bribes, medical payouts, falsified hospital statements." Olivia's voice cracked. "That's the night it happened. Look at the date." Aaron played one of the files. A male voice filled the room. Mason's voice. Smooth, confident. "Make sure the report says accidental fall," it said. "Double the doctor's payment if needed. Delete the backup feed." The room went still. The rain seemed to fade. Olivia covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. "That's him." Aaron looked at Daniel. "This is enough to reopen the case, but we'll need an official submission. If we go public too early, he'll spin it again." "Then we make sure he can't," Daniel said. Aaron hesitated. "There's one person who can validate this evidence. Special Agent Keller, FBI Internal Affairs. He's been tracking Mason for years, but never had a direct link." "Can we trust him?" Olivia asked. "He's clean," Aaron said, "and he hates Mason as much as I do. You gather." They moved to the far side of the room where the single bulb cast their shadows on the concrete wall. Daniel plugged in another drive, isolating the key files. Aaron dialed Keller. The call connected after a few rings. "Agent Keller," Aaron said. "We have what you've been waiting for." The voice on the other end was rough, deliberate. "Be careful with your next words, Walsh. Phones are not safe." "Then meet us," Daniel said. "Midnight. Warehouse by the East River." "Oh." Keller agreed without hesitation. Hours passed. The storm outside thickened into a curtain of water. Olivia sat on a wooden crate, staring at the faint glow of the laptop screen. Mason's voice still echoed in her head, every word dripping with arrogance. Daniel paced nearby, restless. "Once Keller gets this, it's over," he said. Aaron didn't look up from the computer. "It's never over that cleanly. Men like Mason don't fall quietly." The clock ticked toward midnight. When Keller finally arrived, his black coat was soaked through. He looked at each of them carefully before speaking. "You understand what this means if it's real," he said. "It's real," Daniel replied, "and it's only a fraction of what he's done." Keller nodded. He inserted the drive into his tablet and began scanning the data. His jaw tightened as the screen lit up with confirmation logs. "This is solid. I can trace these payments straight to medical board accounts and private investigators under his payroll. This could open a federal case." Olivia spoke softly. "Then why do I still feel like he's winning?" Keller met her eyes. "Because he hasn't lost yet, and he'll do everything to stop this from reaching daylight." Daniel leaned over the table. "Then we take control of the light. We decide where and when the world sees him for what he is." Keller closed the tablet. "Careful. If we move too soon, we lose leverage. But if we wait too long, someone dies next." The words hung in the air like smoke. A sudden gust of wind slammed the warehouse door. Everyone froze. Daniel drew his gun instinctively, eyes scanning the shadows. Keller motioned for silence. The sound came again, only the wind this time, but it left a chill behind. Aaron exhaled slowly. "We're not safe here." Keller slipped the drive into his coat pocket. "I'll get this encrypted at the field office. Don't trust anyone until I contact you." He turned to leave, then paused. "You have no idea how many people Mason has on his payroll. Stay off the grid. That means no phones, no banks, no media." When he was gone, the warehouse fell quiet again. Only the rain and the echo of dripping water remained. Olivia finally spoke. "You think he'll make it?" "He survived worse," Daniel said. "And he knows what he's carrying." Aaron packed the equipment, his movements slow and deliberate. "If Keller fails, we're finished." Daniel nodded. "Then we prepare for that." Olivia looked at the locked door, her voice trembling. "How do you live like this? Always waiting for someone to knock?" Daniel looked at her. the soldier's calm returning to his face. "You don't wait," he said. "You stand." Outside, thunder rolled across the river, long and low, fading into silence. Olivia watched the raindrops run down the window. For the first time, her fear began to harden into something else. Not hope, not anger, but resolve. She whispered to herself, "He's not going to silence me again." Daniel turned off the light. The room fell into darkness, the faint hum of the city, a distant memory. The Plaza Hotel glittered like a palace under the city's golden lights. Limos lined the front entrance, their doors opening to a stream of gowns and tuxedos. Inside, the grand ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, their reflections dancing on marble floors polished to perfection. It was Mason Hale's night, the annual charity gala for the Hale Foundation. Cameras flashed as he entered, smiling, composed, every movement rehearsed for the world. He wore a black tuxedo, a silver watch gleaming at his wrist. Around him, politicians and celebrities murmured admiration. "He's unstoppable," someone whispered. Mason's smile widened. He thrived on moments like this, where power disguised itself as grace. Across the ballroom, Olivia Carter stood in the crowd, uninvited but unnoticed. Her black dress blended into the shadows of the room, her hair pulled back, her eyes calm. Daniel stood beside her, his jaw tight, scanning the exits. Aaron Walsh and Agent Keller were near the sound booth, preparing the feed. Everything was ready. The evidence was encoded in a short video file, timed to play at the height of Mason's speech. Olivia's fingers trembled slightly as she clutched her small purse. Inside was the phone connected to Keller's transmitter. A single tap would broadcast the file to every media outlet covering the event. It had taken weeks of fear, hiding, and loss to reach this moment. Her heartbeat thudded beneath the music. "Once it starts," Daniel said quietly beside her, "don't move. Let the truth speak for itself." She nodded, eyes fixed on the stage. The orchestra faded, replaced by applause. Mason walked to the microphone. The lights softened to gold, wrapping him in reverent glow. "Good evening," he began, his voice deep, smooth, confident. "Tonight we gather not for me, but for the children this foundation serves. Together we build hope, brick by brick, life by life." The crowd erupted in polite applause. He raised his hands modestly. "In times of tragedy, we find strength through compassion. My wife and I have endured our share of loss, but we turn pain into purpose." Olivia's breath caught. The words hit like ice. He was using her child, their death, as a stage prop. Daniel's hand brushed hers, grounding her. "Wait," he murmured. "Let him finish." "Amen," Mason continued, pacing slowly, every gesture precise. "I've learned that no amount of power or wealth matters if we forget empathy. That's why the Hale Foundation will expand to 3 more hospitals next year, in memory of the life we lost." Applause again, louder. The cameras zoomed in. He wiped a single tear that wasn't real. In the sound booth, Aaron looked at Keller. "Now?" he whispered. Keller nodded once. "Now." Aaron pressed the key. The massive screen behind Mason flickered. The audience clapped, thinking it was part of the presentation. Mason turned slightly, smiling for effect, until the first sound played. A voice echoed through the ballroom, his own. "Make sure the report says accidental fall. Double the doctor's payment. Delete the backup feed." The words cut through the music like a blade. The applause died. Silence fell heavy and absolute. Mason froze. His eyes darted toward the screen where a timestamp appeared, followed by the sound of shuffling papers. Another voice, a doctor's, nervous and shaky. "But sir, the injuries—" "Do as I say," Mason's recorded voice barked. Gasps rippled through the room. Guests turned to each other, confused, horrified. Reporters raised their phones. Cameras clicked furiously. "What is this?" Mason demanded, his composure cracking. "This is fake! Someone is sabotaging me!" On screen, more files appeared. Emails, payment receipts, recorded calls. Each one tied his name to cover-ups, bribes, threats. His voice again, cold and unmistakable. "No one will ever believe her. I control the story." Olivia felt tears rise, not from grief this time, but release. Her knees nearly buckled. Daniel caught her arm, whispering, "Stay strong." Mason stepped toward the microphone, desperate. "This is manipulation! A conspiracy!" Keller's voice came over the hotel's speakers, firm and official. Agent Thomas Keller, FBI. All guests remain where you are. The ballroom erupted. Security agents moved in from every corner. Reporters swarmed the stage. Mason's face drained of color as he spotted Keller approaching, badge in hand. "You can't do this here," Mason shouted. "This is a private event." "It's also a federal arrest," Keller replied evenly. "Mason Hale, you are under investigation for obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and falsification of medical reports." Flashes exploded from cameras. The entire ballroom became a storm of light. Olivia watched, frozen, as Mason's bodyguards tried to step forward but were blocked by federal agents. Keller's men surrounded him, reading his rights. Mason's voice broke through the chaos. "You think this changes anything? I built this city. You can't erase me." The crowd booed. Some shouted insults. Others filmed every second. Olivia took a step closer to the stage, unable to look away. He saw her through the sea of faces, and for a moment their eyes locked. Rage twisted his features. "You!" he hissed. "You did this!" She didn't speak. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. The agents pulled his hands behind his back. The cuffs clicked, the cameras caught the moment. The billionaire in silver light, wrists bound, jaw tight, the illusion of perfection shattered. Keller turned toward the reporters. "Evidence has been verified through multiple channels. This operation was authorized by the Department of Justice." The room exploded in noise. Reporters shouted questions. Guests whispered in disbelief. Aaron exhaled beside the sound booth, the tension finally leaving his shoulders. He turned to Daniel. "It worked." "Yen." Daniel didn't smile. "It's not over yet." On stage, Mason tried to break free, shouting curses drowned by flashbulbs and chaos. His perfect world was collapsing in real time. Every second broadcast live. Olivia stood still, tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time in months, she felt air fill her lungs without pain. The truth had found its voice. Keller guided Mason toward the exit. As they passed, Mason looked back one last time, eyes burning with fury. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "You don't know what's coming." She didn't answer. The chandelier lights shimmered across her face, reflecting both exhaustion and strength. As the doors closed behind him, the noise of the ballroom rose again. Reporters calling, guests murmuring, flashes like lightning. Olivia turned to Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's over." Daniel looked toward the stage, where the screen still glowed with Mason's last recorded words. "Not yet," he said quietly. The orchestra instruments lay abandoned, their strings vibrating faintly from the chaos. The air smelled of sweat, perfume, and the electric tang of truth. Olivia stood beneath the chandeliers, surrounded by a city that had finally seen what she had lived through. The light touched her hair, soft and gold. She closed her eyes, exhaling the last of her fear. Around her, the crowd pressed closer, whispering her name without knowing who she truly was. And above them all, the screen faded to black, leaving only the echo of his voice. "I control the story." Now he didn't. Rain fell again on the courthouse steps, washing the marble clean of yesterday's headlines. Reporters gathered behind the barricades, umbrellas clashing, voices rising over the sound of the storm. Inside the United States District Court, the air was colder than the weather outside. Every seat was filled. Journalists, citizens, even former employees of Hale Corp came to witness the man who once ruled their city stand before justice. Mason Hale entered through the side door, wrists cuffed, his suit rumpled, hair slicked back but no longer neat. The cameras flashed like lightning as he passed. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. He could feel every eye on him. Olivia sat near the front of the courtroom beside Daniel. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers clasped tightly together. The weight of months pressed down on her chest, but she refused to look away. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about truth staying alive long enough to speak. The judge, a woman with gray hair and a steady gaze, took her seat. "Court is now in session," she announced. The murmur in the gallery fell silent. At the prosecution table, Aaron Walsh stood and adjusted his glasses. He looked toward the jury, then back at the man he had once failed to bring down. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen," he began, "today we present evidence that Mr. Mason Hale engaged in a deliberate and coordinated cover-up of his wife's assault and the subsequent loss of her unborn child. We will show you payments, threats, and manipulation of the medical system designed to erase the truth. Mason leaned toward his lawyer, whispering sharply. His attorney, a polished man with a silver tie, rose when it was his turn. "This case," he said smoothly, "is not about justice. It is about vengeance. My client is a philanthropist, a man of vision, and a victim of hysteria fueled by media frenzy." A few jurors exchanged looks. The first piece of evidence was played on the courtroom screen. Mason's voice filled the speakers, calm and cold. "Make sure the report says accidental fall. Double the doctor's payment." A ripple moved through the audience. Mason's jaw tightened. His lawyer objected immediately. "This recording is taken out of context." "Overruled," the judge said. Aaron continued methodically. He showed wire transfers, emails, medical statements, all threads weaving the same web, each one tied to Mason's account, his signature, his command. When the testimony began, the courtroom felt smaller. The doctor who had falsified the report stood on the witness stand, pale and shaking. "He threatened to ruin my career," she said, voice trembling. "I had a daughter in school. I didn't know what else to do." Mason's lawyer rose again. "Did he ever explicitly say the word bribe?" The doctor's eyes filled with tears. "He didn't have to." Olivia looked down, her breath catching. Every word reopened the wound she carried, but she forced herself to listen. Each admission was a piece of the truth she had fought for. Aaron called the next witness, Agent Keller. He stepped to the stand in his dark suit, his presence quiet but commanding. He spoke clearly. "We found evidence of encrypted messages between Mr. Hale and several hospital administrators. They included coded language for financial transfers and requests to alter medical files. We verified the data through federal servers." The defense objected again. "Speculation. Denied," the judge said firmly. Keller continued. "We also traced security footage deletions to Mr. Hale's private server. The same night his wife was admitted to the hospital, the footage was wiped remotely." The gallery murmured again. Mason sat stiffly, staring at the table, jaw locked. When it was Olivia's turn to testify, the courtroom fell silent. She walked slowly to the stand, wearing a simple dark dress. The clerk swore her in. She raised her right hand, her fingers steady. Aaron approached gently. "Mrs. Carter, please describe the events of the night of June 12th. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "He came home angry," she began. "He said I embarrassed him. I told him the truth mattered more than his pride. He pushed me. I fell. I remember the sound of glass, the floor, the pain, and then nothing." The courtroom was still except for the faint scribbling of pens. Aaron nodded. "Did you ever receive an apology from Mr. Hale?" Her lips trembled. "He brought me a diamond bracelet. Did he admit what he had done?" "No," she said softly. "He told me to say I fell, that it was my fault." "Why did you stay silent?" She looked at Mason for the first time. "Because he said if I spoke, my brother would lose everything, and I believed him." The judge glanced toward the jury. A few members wiped at their eyes. When the defense cross-examined, Mason's lawyer tried to smile. "Mrs. Carter, grief can distort memory. Isn't it possible you misremembered what happened that night?" Olivia met his gaze, her eyes clear. "I remember exactly what happened." The lawyer hesitated. "You have no medical proof of assault." She took a breath. "No, just the scars." She lifted her sleeve, revealing faint bruising that never fully healed. The room went silent again. Aaron stood once more. "Your Honor, the prosecution rests." The judge nodded. "The jury will reconvene after recess." As people began to rise, Mason suddenly stood. "You think you can destroy me?" he shouted. "You're all part of her little performance." The bailiff stepped forward. "Mr. Hale, sit down." He pointed toward Olivia. "You did this. You took everything from me." She didn't flinch. "You did that yourself." The judge banged the gavel. "Order!" Mason's lawyer tried to pull him back, whispering urgently, but Mason's control broke completely. "I built this city," he roared. "Without me, you're nothing." The cameras outside the courtroom captured his voice echoing through the hall. Reporters scribbled furiously, already crafting the next headline. The judge rose. "Mr. Hale, you will remain silent or be removed." "End one." But Mason's voice cracked, desperation replacing rage. "She wanted the baby gone. She's lying." Gasps filled the courtroom. Olivia's eyes welled with tears. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The judge's gavel struck hard. Enough. We'll resume after recess. Mason was escorted out, his shouts fading down the corridor. Olivia remained seated, hands folded in her lap, breathing shallow. Daniel reached over and took her hand. "It's ending," he whispered. She shook her head faintly. "Not yet." The clock ticked toward afternoon as the rain outside softened into mist. Somewhere down the hall, a door slammed. The sound echoed through the courthouse, sharp and final. Morning sunlight filtered through the courthouse windows, soft and pale after a night of rain. The room was quiet now, stripped of chaos, filled only with the murmur of anticipation. The jury returned to their seats, faces drawn and pale from the weight of what they had heard. Mason Hale sat at the defense table, wrists chained, suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. He no longer looked like the man from the magazines. Judge Marianne Holt adjusted her glasses and looked over the courtroom. "This court has heard all evidence and witness testimonies," she said clearly. "We will now proceed with the verdict." The air stilled. Olivia sat beside Daniel, her hands clasped tightly. Aaron stood nearby, his expression unreadable. Every sound, the shuffle of papers, the faint squeak of a chair, felt magnified. The jury foreman rose. His voice was calm but firm. "On the charge of obstruction of justice, we find the defendant, Mason Hale, guilty. On the charge of witness tampering, guilty. On the charge of falsifying medical reports, guilty. On the charge of aggravated assault resulting in the loss of a child, guilty." A tremor passed through the room. Mason's head dropped, his jaw tightening. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Judge Holt nodded once. "The sentence is 40 years in federal custody without parole." Her gavel struck once, sharp and final. "This court is adjourned." No. The noise that followed felt distant, almost muted. Reporters rushed for the doors, their voices rising in a storm of questions. Camera lights flickered like bursts of lightning. Mason sat frozen, eyes unfocused, as the bailiffs lifted him to his feet. Olivia watched in silence. She expected to feel triumph or relief, but what filled her chest was something quieter, something heavy and still. Mason turned his head once as they led him away. Their eyes met across the room for the last time. His expression was not anger anymore. It was disbelief, the shock of a man who had finally found a wall he couldn't buy his way through. Daniel placed a hand on his sister's shoulder. "It's over," he whispered. She nodded slowly. "No, it's finally beginning." Outside, the rain had stopped. The courthouse steps were slick, shining in the pale light. Reporters shouted questions, but Daniel shielded her as they walked through the crowd. The flashbulbs flared around them, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. When they reached the car, Olivia paused and looked back. The courthouse towered against the sky, its bronze plaque gleaming. She whispered something under her breath, a prayer or a farewell, before getting in. The next morning, the headlines covered every screen. "Justice served. Mason Hale sentenced to 40 years. Billionaire's empire crumbles after trial. His company's stock collapsed overnight. Investors fled. Board members resigned. The empire he had built on silence was dissolving, brick by brick." Olivia stayed in Daniel's apartment for several days, resting. The nightmares came and went. She would wake in the middle of the night, the echo of glass shattering still sharp in her ears. Daniel never said much, just left a light on in the hallway and made coffee before dawn. On the third morning, she stood by the window, watching the city below. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. A thin mist clung to the rooftops. Somewhere, a street musician played a slow tune on a saxophone, soft and full of ache. Daniel approached quietly. "Aaron called," he said. "The Justice Department's closing the file. Keller's testimony sealed the case." Olivia nodded. "And Mason?" "Transferred to a federal facility in upstate New York," he said. "No appeal." She didn't reply. Her gaze stayed fixed on the skyline. The city looked different now, still loud, still alive, but less monstrous. Later that afternoon, she went to the riverfront alone. The air smelled of rain and iron. The water shimmered under the sunlight, calm and endless. She walked until she reached the bench where she had once sat with Daniel before everything fell apart. She sat down slowly, hands folded in her lap. From her purse, she pulled out a small folded letter. It was the last one Mason had sent before his sentencing. The envelope was plain, the handwriting sharp and precise. She opened it carefully. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to remember that I loved you once, even if you don't believe it now." The words felt empty, stripped of power. She let the paper fall into the river. The current took it, spinning it away, until it disappeared beneath the ripples. She stayed there for a while, listening to the sound of the city behind her, the hum of traffic, the laughter of strangers, the slow rhythm of a place still breathing. The world had moved on, but she was still learning how to join it. By evening, she returned home. Daniel had dinner waiting, 2 plates in silence. They ate quietly. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Do you ever think about what's next?" She smiled faintly. "Maybe I'll write. Not about him, but about surviving." "You should," he said. "People need to hear your story." Her eyes softened. "Not my story," she replied. "Our story." Everyone who refused to look away. Now, a week later, she stood outside a small bookstore downtown. The sign above the window read, "The Carter Foundation, Stories of Recovery." Inside, the shelves held books written by survivors, doctors, and advocates. A quiet space for voices that had once been silenced. A woman approached her at the counter. "Are you Olivia Carter?" Olivia nodded. The woman smiled. "Your story saved me. Thank you." Olivia felt warmth rise to her throat. "Then it was worth everything." Ugh. When the woman left, she stood by the window, watching the evening sun fall across the street. The light was golden, slow, forgiving. She reached into her bag and took out a notebook. On the first page, she wrote one sentence. "Justice doesn't erase scars, it gives them meaning." Outside, the city's lights came on one by one, reflections rippling across the glass. Somewhere far away, the sound of a train echoed, deep and steady, like a heartbeat returning to rhythm. Olivia closed the notebook, her hands steady now. She turned off the light, leaving the room bathed in twilight. At the window, she watched the river shimmer beneath the setting sun, its surface calm, endless, and free.